Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you all being here. Thank you for joining us this morning. We have a very full schedule today. We have the recipients of the 2014 Winthrop Chamber of Commerce Business Scholarship and the Helen DeLelio Family Foundation. Thank you. Dunkin' Donuts at our Bridge Chamber Scholarship. And we have as our guest speaker Jon Hurst, President of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts. Last Friday was our $10,000 auction and dinner, which was a great success. Thank you to everyone who purchased a raffle ticket, joined us at the Cottage Park Yacht Club, bid on silent auction items, and donated to the auctions. This is our biggest fundraiser of the year, so thank you all for making it a great success. Thank you, Cottage Park Yacht Club, for hosting again this year. Okay, now normally we come up to this point where we have new members, but I believe we have no new members to be introduced this morning. Okay? Moving on to announcements. There will be a June Chamber of Business Breakfast. The Chamber of Business Breakfast will be on Tuesday, June 10th, with guest speaker Karen Polito. Karen is a Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. The June breakfast will be our last one for the summer. We will resume in September, so mark your calendars for June 10th. We have a number of multi-chamber events coming up. This is a great way to network with other chamber businesses. There will be a multi-chamber event on May 22nd at the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center at 20 Maverick Square. Winthrop and Revere are hosting a multi-chamber event June 18th at Chatter's Bar and Grill in the Revere Showcase Cinema. Winthrop's 6th annual townwide yard sale is scheduled for Saturday, June 14th, rain or shine. Participants may sign up now at the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce at 207 Hagman Road or on the Chamber website, www.winthropchamber.com. The fee to participate is only $25, which includes a spot on the official map, advertising, internet listing, and balloons delivered to the home that morning. The fee is non-refundable. The deadline to sign up in person at the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce office is Friday, June 6th, or online by Sunday, June 8th. For more information, call the Chamber number, 617-846-9898, or of course the Chamber website, or email, www.winthropchamber.com. We also have some forms here today if you're interested in picking up one. The Chamber of Commerce Adopt-a-Pole Street banner program is about to begin. This program has been very successful at adding color to Winthrop's main streets and adding a decorative touch to the light poles. So businesses or individuals interested in sponsoring a banner should contact Chamber office 617-846-9898 as soon as possible. There are only a few spots left. Now we have Betsy Shane would like to make an announcement.
Yeah, sorry. On your tables, you'll see that there is a postcard there. The Hyatt Harbor side is one of our members. They couldn't be here today, but they just wanted me to show you, and you don't need it. It's just a little postcard. They're running a neighborhood program. So if you go to the Harborside Grill in the first level of the hotel, for any resident, whether you're East Boston, Winthrop, Revere, Chelsea, I think those are the neighborhoods that are included in there. It's a 50% off your check. It doesn't include alcohol or gratuities. But it is a great, it's a great little neighborhood promotional program that they're doing. It runs till the end of the year. They wanted to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't, so I told them I would just let them know.
Thank you, Betsy. Okay, now I'd like to have Chris Miller come up to introduce the scholarship winners. Christine.
So first of all, we want to thank all the business owners and residents of our town who help support the chamber and everything we do. One of the things that we do is give out scholarships. And the last 2 years, we've been able to give out 2 scholarships. Thanks to Helen and Gary DeLello and their family foundation, Dunkin' Donuts at the Bridge, so we give out 2 scholarships to any Winthrop child, regardless of which high school they go to. The scholarship is given to the two blind essays that we do, to the child who successfully answers the question, if you were to be a business owner and start a new business in Winthrop, what would it be and why? So we have two scholarships that we're going to give out today, and I'm going to do introduce the first one. It's going to Thomas Nee, who goes to BC High. He's here today with his aunt and his grandmother. He's the middle child of Jack and Judy Nee on Johnson Ave. Tom goes to BC High, and he has enjoyed many honors there, and he has participated in many extracurricular activities, including the jazz band ensemble. So please take a peek at Zoomix, Tom and your friends. Also, the St. Louis Project, which is a weekly mission to connect Boston's homeless. Tom's passion is playing acoustic American folk guitar, and they anticipate that he'll be his dorm mates at Providence College will be hearing him play late into the night. So, Tom, why don't you come on up? And we're going to have Tom read his essay, and then we'll be presenting a check as well at the end. So please go.
If I were an entrepreneur looking to create a new business in Winthrop, I would capitalize on Winthrop's history, seaside location, and proximity to Boston by creating a tour business. Many tourists to Boston enjoy day trips to places like Rockport, Salem, and/or Cape Cod. Winthrop offers the same charms that those destinations do, and then some, but is much closer, thereby making it an easy destination. This undertaking would do the bulk of its business during the 3 seasons, but then feature some winter activities such as the French Square tree lighting, perhaps a holiday stroll, maybe sledding on Deer Island or Fort Banks, ice skating on the pond, etc. All of the tour attractions are already in place. They just have to be marketed to a wider audience. By establishing partnerships with tour agencies, hotels, and the Boston Tourism Bureau, Winthrop would become a destination for day trippers and even overnight guests. The town dock or the dock at MWRA could be used by already existing boat shuttle services in Boston Harbor. Bicycle rickshaws, golf carts, mopeds, taxis, a bike rack, and bus schedules would all be there to greet disembarking guests, along with a kiosk directing visitors to places of interest, along with venues for food and for drink. The first leg of the trip would be out to Point Shirley, where guests could collect from the Bay Authentic Paul Revere, smelt from the foundry once located there. The Hancock Summer Home, as well as some of the first homes on the island, would be featured. Heading out to Deer Island, guests would be encouraged to climb the hills for some of the most breathtaking views on the East Coast. A stop would be made at one of the local restaurants for lunch, and then on for some of the most more sightseeing and play. Maybe a 9-hole round of golf through a 1-day pass agreement with the golf course, a kayak ride along Winthrop's inner harbor with a treasure hunt on Snake Island for the kids, a stroll through Belle Isle Marsh, an art tour at the Clock Tower Gallery, surfing at the end of Winthrop Beach, fishing or cohogging at Winthrop Dean House, bike ride along the renovated harbor path, a historical tour of Winthrop's life as a summer destination, shop among the stores and boutiques in the 3 shopping districts. The list is endless. The day is made complete by a sumptuous meal at one of our fine restaurants. Sausalito, California is a perfect example of the kind of destination my tour company would feature Winthrop to be. From sunup to sundown and beyond a place to live, work, and play. Truly the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you, Tom. See, we know all this exists, but Tom made it sound really delightful, didn't he? So the next award will be given by the DeLillo Family Foundation. Did you want to come up and sit with me? We'll do the check after. We'll do a photo afterwards, yeah, with the check, I think. I'm introducing Mitzi Lawler, who represents the Helen DeLillo Dunkin' Donuts at the Bridge Foundation, who's matched the Chamber Award and allows us to give 2 $500 awards. And the next award goes to Rachel Watkins. Rachel is a senior at Winthrop High School. She's an honor student and ranking within the top 10% of her class. She is the secretary of the National Honor Society at her school, captain of the varsity soccer team, varsity lacrosse team, and she's also played high school tennis and basketball. Outside of school, she coaches and referees for Winthrop Youth Soccer. Rachel's planning to attend Simmons College in the fall, where she will be majoring in physical therapy. She's been accepted to an accelerated 6-year program, which means that she'll be able to graduate with her doctorate in physical therapy after just 6 years. That's quite an accomplishment. So Rachel, why don't you come on up and you can read yours?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Watkins. So if I were an entrepreneur living in Winthrop, I would develop a recreational boating program. The ocean is Winthrop's biggest resource. However, the only people who grow up on the water are those who can afford a boat and a yacht club membership. There should be a program similar to Winthrop's Park and Rec that allows children to try sailing or boating for a minimal cost. Parks and Rec and other summer and after-school programs keep children occupied and learning rather than getting in trouble or caught up in the wrong crowd. Children should be able to experience sailing and boating even if their family cannot afford to buy their own boat, because otherwise it is pointless to live on the ocean. If I were to develop this business, I would offer sailing, boating, kayaking, and paddleboarding courses. I have lived on the ocean in Winthrop for my entire life, and I have no idea how to sail or paddleboard. However, I'd like to learn. Winthrop's great resource should be able to be utilized by everyone, despite their knowledge or skill of ocean-based activities. Having a program that offers children the opportunity to learn how to sail, for example, might spark a lifelong interest in the sport that will lead them to earn a college scholarship. Everyone should be given the chance to try any sport or activity that they want without a major cost to pay. If a program like this were to happen, along with sparking children's interest in water sports, it might also spark people to take better care of our beaches and our ocean. As an entrepreneur living in Winthrop, I would be sure to utilize the amazing ocean that we are surrounded by.
They're beautiful essays, well done. Thank you very much. On behalf of the entire committee, myself, the DeLello family, Mary Ann Russo, and also Jonathan Polino on the committee, we really enjoyed reading a couple of dozen essays. They were all wonderful. So if you submitted one, please speak to the chamber. We have space to open a business. I'd also like to invite, we're very honored to have with us today the superintendent of Winthrop Public Schools, John Massaro, who wanted to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Chris. Not sure if you all know, but Winthrop Public Schools is a member now of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to congratulate our students. Tom Nee from Boston College High School is also a Winthrop resident. Tom. I feel like, Tom, we've met before. I feel like you were one of my students many, many years ago, maybe over at the Winthrop School of Performing Arts. I just recognized that name. So congratulations. It's great to see the success that you're doing, especially in the arts as well. So we're very excited for your future at Providence College. Moving on to Rachel, who I've gotten to know the last 3 years. Rachel is an exceptional student who works hard every single day, as you can witness that you've just heard her story. And look at the program that she's entering into, a 6-year program that's going to give her a doctorate right out of that program. So we're very excited for Rachel. I know that she will be very successful. I want to congratulate your parents, both Tom and Rachel, because of the great work that they have done throughout this. This is an exciting time of year for you folks, and this is an exciting time of year for your families. You've worked hard, and this is my favorite time of year because it's finally, we get to that point of all of that work that we do, that we can finally see the acknowledgments. And I'm very proud of the students of Winthrop, as well as the Winthrop Public School students. And, but more importantly, I would like to take a special moment to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Lelio family for doing the scholarships because it really showcases our students, as well as the Chamber of Commerce has always been very, very pro-education in Winthrop. And there's nothing better than going to an awards ceremony to see our teachers be honored, our coaches be honored, and now today to see our students be honored. So thank you very much, and I look forward to many, many, many years of being with the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Tom and Rachel and the committee members that are here today come up for a quick photo op, and then we'll move on to the, everything. Gary's got to take his cast off.
I am not going to have that picture. I just can't do this. Somehow look casual. What do you want?
All right, one more, and everybody look at me this time. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Superintendent of Schools John Massero, and again, congratulations to the Scholarship Award recipients. We look forward to seeing your progress in Providence College and Simmons College. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite up Mark Wallace to introduce our guest speaker for today. Mark.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to introduce Jon Hurst, President of the Retail Association of Massachusetts. Jon was named President of the Retailers Association in 1990. As Chief Executive Officer of 3,200 members statewide trade association, Jon Hurst manages the staff, business affairs, member services and education, public affairs, and governmental affairs of the organization. RAM was organized as the Voice Retailing in 1918, and today represents all types and sizes of stores, restaurants, in the retail employee sector of the state. John, I didn't know you did this much.
You paid me.
John also serves as the chairman of the board of the Retail Merchants Workmen's Comp, a nonprofit self-insurance group regulated by the Massachusetts State Division of Insurance. John has served as the chairman of the National Association of the State Retail Association from 1989 to 2001. In reality, John does so much for this whole state. I can go on, but John is just a wonderful man. He really serves the whole state and independents very, very well. And without him, I think local independent businesses and more importantly, small businesses would be in serious, serious trouble. John is just a first-class guy, really there for everyone. And anytime you pick up, you want to give him a call, he's there to answer you. So, without going into further, I'd like to introduce Jon Hurst, not only as a friend, but just a class act guy, and is here for all of us. My pleasure, Jon Hurst.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark has been a longtime member of RAM and very active, and we appreciate his support. I appreciate all of you being here, and there's a number of members here, and I'm glad you're here. And Betsy, it's a pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. I do this quite often, get around to local chambers. I frankly view it as one of the most important parts of my job, frankly, to get out to the cities and towns, talk to chambers of commerce, because look, we have a lot of members, and they're all over the state, and what we do in Boston is important, but frankly, I tell my members all the time, be involved in your local chamber of commerce, because that really is the grassroots level of small business in the Commonwealth, and there's 100 chambers of commerce across the state. Some do it very, very well, like the Winthrop Chamber. Some maybe not as well. But, we believe that retailers and restaurants, you really need to be involved in your local chamber. And clearly they are here in Winthrop, and it's because, this chamber represents all types of small businesses and all your interests. That doesn't happen everywhere. I've certainly seen it in some of the issues that I'm going to talk to you about this morning. Chambers getting involved in important issues to maintain their small businesses and their main streets. The issue that Mark and Betsy really asked me to come out to talk about this morning was really the issue of what we're seeing in the legislature on the labor front, mandated labor costs for small businesses. This has been something that our organization has been working very, very hard on. We've gotten our members involved. We've asked the local chambers to be involved, and it's been one of the more frustrating issues, quite frankly, that I have dealt with in my 25-year experience here with the Retailers Association of Massachusetts. And that's the whole combination of what we're seeing coming forward in this election year, the combination of the minimum wage, and with it also mandatory paid sick leave, and hopefully with it maybe some unemployment insurance reform. But the way things are turning, it's not going, frankly, very well for the employer community. It's politics being politics. It seems to be the waves seem to be coming in the direction of organized labor, who really are pushing a lot of these issues and looking to use them to promote their own agendas. When I do speak to local chambers, there obviously is a wide variety of type of businesses involved in chambers, and some of them some of the members don't really understand. Well, at first glance, a minimum wage increase. I don't really care. In fact, if you do a lot of polling, generally speaking, people support an increase in the minimum wage. It's a feel-good type of issue. They think it's good for employees, good for the economy, and so forth. Depending upon what type of work setting you sit in, maybe you aren't open 7 days a week. Perhaps you are only open 5 days a week. 9 to 5. You don't have any part-timers. You don't hire teenagers. You aren't really involved in serving the consumer, all week long and for long hours. Perhaps you aren't in that area. Perhaps you don't really understand that. It's not really going to affect your business. So you think it's something that you can accept. But I wanted to, the message that I like to give on this issue is that really, even though you may not be in the retail sector or restaurant sector or consumer service sector, an increase, particularly a very dramatic increase, does affect you. It affects you in a number of ways. It affects you in higher costs. Whether it's costs that you go out and spend in your local stores or in restaurants, it affects you in higher costs in your taxes. And you have to realize the reason for this there are a couple reasons. For a store or a restaurant, your typical small business, your payroll is a % of sales. Okay, if for whatever reason through the economy or through mandates through the government, your payroll rates rise, your cost of your actual payroll, your health insurance rates, which a lot of small businesses are seeing the ramifications there as well, due to some very detrimental impacts on the rollout of the ACA and how it's affected the Massachusetts reform. All those payroll costs going up. That means something's got to give. If your payroll is a % of sales, yet your sales are not rising, what's going to happen? Well, you got a couple options. You can raise prices, you can cut employment, you can do a combination. But that's a very difficult thing to do in this economy, and with all the competition out there. Whether you're a hardware store or a grocery store or a coffee shop, your consumers have unlimited options of where they go and buy goods and services. And more today than they ever have. It used to be that it was just the competition across the street, in the next town, maybe in the next state. That's all changed. And that's why it's becoming so much more disturbing to me that, you have, state initiatives that are not just moderate steps. They're very drastic, costly steps that put us out of competitive step with not only those businesses in those states over the border, but more importantly, it's the competition right here on the smartphone. Our award winners today, I mean, congratulations. They're growing up with the smartphone, and that's how a lot of they're starting to find all sorts of goods and services without even leaving their house. And today, you can even buy groceries online and have it shipped right to your front door. It's the competition and realizing that, you can't just raise prices, you can't just cut employment hours and therefore your service level for your customers and expect those customers to keep coming back. You're creating a real squeeze on those small businesses for them to stay open and to continue to be profitable. But the other higher costs beyond just out of your own pocket, through consumer costs, higher taxes. And that's what you've got to realize, the real driving force behind the raising of the minimum wage. Also, the mandatory paid sick leave. They're pushing an initiative. It'd be the first in the nation to require mandatory paid sick leave right on down to small businesses. This is being pushed by organized labor, specifically the SEIU, the Service Employee Union, which is out of New York City. And they've had an initiative in recent years. They've come into Massachusetts very, very heavily. And they've organized a lot of healthcare facilities, and they've gotten legislation through the state legislature to mandate that home day care workers and home health care workers, if they receive state funding through Medicaid and so forth, have to become unionized. And these are areas that home health care and home day care, those are areas that were supposed to save people money, whether it's home health care, an alternative to nursing homes, or home daycare, an alternative to certain daycare facilities. But now the legislature gave into this organizing effort and mandated that they become unionized. And that's what's behind this now this effort on the legislation is to, now that they're unionized, is to raise their contracts. They have specific contracts and they're earning, probably $10 to $12 on average, for working out of a home. And this is all about bumping up those contracts. So, and when that happens and that impacts your state government, your local government, that's going to raise your taxes. So we're looking at increased consumer costs and we're looking at increased taxes, based upon what is frankly an idea that maybe its time had come, an idea to raise the minimum wage, but did we really need to go, $2.50 or $3? If you look at what historically we have done in Massachusetts, the minimum wage has historically gone up about every 5 years. But, back in the 80s, it would go up, you could measure it by quarters, 50-cent type of increases. The change started occurring in the 90s, and it was more like $1. Now we're looking at upwards of $3 increases. And that a lot of the argument is, well, we got to keep up with inflation. Well, if you actually had pegged the minimum wage to the inflation rate since the last increase, 2007, the minimum wage increase we'd be looking at today would be up to about $9.30, roughly half of what is being considered and is likely to pass the legislature. So, we're throwing out good judgment. We're throwing out what is occurring in our neighbor states. We're throwing out what even the president is calling for down in Congress, and we're far exceeding it. We're essentially just rubber stamping what the organized labor objective is. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound like I'm organized labor. You know, my mom was a lifelong teacher and very involved in the teachers union. I'm not anti-labor, but I've been at this now in this job for 25 years, and I'm seeing a situation in which I've never seen it this bad, in which our elected officials, our public policy leaders, have not really had the ability to, at any point, say no to organized labor on any issue. On every front, every issue that is coming along, and you're even seeing it within the statewide election campaigns. A lot of the discussion on the election campaigns, they're essentially embracing the labor agenda and saying that is our agenda, and that's got implications for small businesses, and it's got implications for taxpayers, because the reality is today most of the labor membership in the state. It's the public unions, they're the SEIUs. It's folks that work for the government or receive government money to fund their operations, which in turn has an impact upon you as taxpayers. So even if your operations aren't affected by the minimum wage, you don't think it is, you are affected again by higher costs and both in taxes and consumer costs. You're also affected if you believe that we want to save and maintain our main streets. There is been a real great effort in recent years. We want to, Small Business Saturday and other efforts, and we've supported these. We've done radio campaign efforts about trying to get our consumers to return to Main Street and support small businesses. Consumers, again, have unlimited options of where they can spend their dollars for consumer goods and services. We think it's important that they spend a certain amount of that, a good part of it, with their small businesses. Because if they don't, they're not going to be around. Those main streets are going to go dark, and they're never going to come back. We have a long, great history here in New England of having picturesque, vibrant main streets. They're at risk. They're at risk because consumers, again, have a lot of options, and if you put those small businesses at too hard of a competitive disadvantage, their customers are going to go elsewhere. So that's number two. If you really believe in supporting our main streets and our small businesses, you really should be calling for a moderate increase in the minimum wage, not something dramatic, essentially a 40% increase that we're seeing on the table now. And finally, if you're a parent, if you have young people in your household, teenagers, I've got to hand it to the organized labor folks. They've really seized the messaging public-wise. They've created this perception that minimum wage earners, those earning, not only $8, which are very few, frankly, right on up to that whole realm of $8 to $11. They've created this perception that they're all breadwinners of families of four, and that could not be farther from the truth. The reality is the biggest group still are teenagers, and over 50% are the teenagers through the younger 20s range. These are young folks that are looking for that first opportunity, that first job, saving for college, getting experience out in the workforce. And here it is in May, you hear a lot of rhetoric from some of our elected officials. It's so important to hire teenagers, get them off the street and give them that summer job. And we've made that point over and over again. We've agreed with them and made that point up in the legislature. But for some reason, our elected officials are totally ignoring what has happened over the last 15 years in the Commonwealth. Massachusetts had one of the highest teen employment rates in the entire country. As recently as 1999, we have 53% of our teenagers with jobs in Massachusetts back in 1999. The most recent year that we have numbers available for our 2012, that number plummeted to 26%, cut in more than half. Probably a bigger drop than any other state in the country. Now, is that all because of the minimum wage? No, but is it a contributor? Yes, and if you think there's a huge problem now of teenagers getting out there and finding summer jobs and getting both that work experience and the ability to save for college and prevent some of these huge student loans that so many of them are struggling with today, you have to realize that we are working against that today with putting up a minimum wage to the level that employers, they have no alternative, frankly, than a lot of them were hiring them because it was the right thing to do. You might as well, if you got to pay a 15-year-old the very same thing as a 20-something, who are you going to hire? Someone that's actually had some job experience and has been out there in the workforce more. That's what you're going to do. And, the very same people that are pushing the minimum wage increase, their solution, it appears to be, they go up to the legislature quite often, and their solution is taxpayer-funded job opportunities. Summer jobs paid for by the taxpayer. They've been pushing for about $20 million worth of taxpayer-funded jobs, particularly in the city of Boston. It looks like it may come in at about less than half of that, maybe $9 million. But that's a drop in the bucket. And is that really the solution for our teenagers? To put them out in the streets and not give them jobs and then turn around and ask the taxpayer to fund jobs for them. So, those are the reasons why, even if you're not a store, if you're not a restaurant, these are the reasons why you should, be talking to your public officials. You're talking to your legislators that, this is something we need some common sense on. You don't need to go overboard. You don't need to adopt 100% the agenda of organized labor, which is exactly what's happened. And we've had 2 bills passed the legislature. The Senate passed a bill that would take us from $8 to $11, by far the highest minimum wage in the entire country, and obviously far higher than even what the president's calling nationwide. And let me just say, I don't have a huge beef with raising the minimum wage, particularly on the federal level. I think that makes some sense. At least if you raise it for 50 states, you're going to have a level playing field with your competition right here, right? Or over the border in New Hampshire. Everyone's going to have those increased costs, and that's not going to force consumers to go somewhere else as opposed to their local main streets. That makes some sense. But to put our own employers at a huge disadvantage, and therefore our own employees and our own economy, that just doesn't make any common sense. So, the Senate embraced a 38% minimum wage increase. Again, the cumulative CPI would be more like about a little over 20% since the last increase. And think about what we've gone through in the economy since 2007, since the last increase. That increase passed when we were at our peak economically. Think about where we've been since then and the struggle that we've had. Today, we are just barely now back to the job level in the Commonwealth that we had back then. And we're still struggling. So we had the Senate take that position. We had the House take a little bit more moderate a position, but was it something that we were advocating for? No. They did 1050. They did not put the CPI in it, which the Senate did, and they had a little bit more moderate on the tip wage, which is an important issue for restaurants with tipped employees. However, the 1050 is the very same number that the SEIU and the organized labor folks have been pushing and are looking to put on the ballot in November. So did we get something back in return? Arguably, no. What our objectives were was to have a relatively more affordable level, maybe more like the level down in Congress, maybe more like the level some of our border states are looking at. We are also looking at doing something about outlier issues. When I say outlier issues, these are issues that only affect Massachusetts. And one of the biggest ones, which affects retailers, we have a vestige of the blue laws, which requires retailers on Sunday to pay time and a half pay. So at a minimum wage of $8, the minimum wage on Sunday is not $8, it's $12. So at $11 for a retailer, the minimum wage on Sunday is not $11. The minimum wage on Sunday is $16.50. While up in New Hampshire, it's still $7.25. This is a vestige of the blue laws. It dates back to 1980 when the minimum wage was $3.10. It was a trade-off really from the retailing industry to organized labor in order to get stores open in the first place on Sundays, on Sunday afternoon. It was frankly something that was very affordable and something that you probably needed to get volunteers to work in the first place on Sundays. Well, times have changed. Consumer patterns have changed. Sunday is now really the biggest sales per hour day of the week, Sunday afternoon. Saturday may be the biggest sales day in general, but Sunday afternoon is the biggest sales per hour period. You got to be open. Consumers demand it. They're busy. They shop then. They want to shop then. How in the world do you stay profitable when you are paying a minimum wage earner, a teenager, $16.50 an hour on Sunday, and that's a new employee. Think about all these employees that you've had for years and years. Where are they going to be? Many of them are going to be well into the 20s per hour. So the time and a half pay on Sunday, that's something that we wanted to seek some changes on. Either repeal it or at least get rid of it for small businesses. And we thought we were getting some traction there. Right now, today only 2 retailers in the entire Commonwealth have organized workforces. That's Stop and Shop and Shaw's. They could keep it with their contract. Even if you wanted to keep it for all their big competitors, the Walmarts, Demoulas, and so forth, okay. But let the small businesses, get a break, and maybe 50 employees or under, let them operate like every other business in the Commonwealth does. Only retailers have to do this, not employees at the Red Sox, or not employees at restaurants, not employees at hospitals. And frankly, it's something that only affects Massachusetts and one other state, Rhode Island, which copied us in order to get stores open originally under the blue laws there as well. We ran into, we were getting some traction, and then along came organized labor, and they would not even support something moderate like a small business exemption. And frankly, this is 2014. You heard things happening in the legislature that you thought went out of style 20, 30 years ago. Actual threats by certain folks in organized labor that said, well, if you do this, if you support this, if you Democratic legislator, file this amendment, push this amendment, we're going to find an opponent for you in the next primary. That type of thing occurring, in my mind, shows is a very dark mark against organized labor, number one. But also, it's something that really is disappointing with our elected officials, that they would not stand up to these types of threats and say, well, you know what, I stand for Main Street, I stand for good public policy, and we're going to get rid of these outlier issues. The other issue besides time and a half pay on Sunday is a teen wage. The vast majority, the majority of states in the entire country allow for a teen wage, even 50 cents below the minimum wage for just 90 days, a summer job for a teenager. The majority of states have it. Federal law allows for it. Massachusetts has never had that. And we thought we were getting some traction. The Boston Globe even supported it. But again, organized labor just stood up and said, no, we will not accept a teen wage. And the legislature backed off. So the other thing that we were trying to do, okay, we're going to see significant employer increases through the minimum wage. Is there something that we can do to balance the cost of doing business, to balance this off for employers? How about unemployment insurance? Unemployment insurance has been an outlier in Massachusetts forever. We've been talking about this for 25 years. Not only is Massachusetts the most generous unemployment insurance system in the country and the most costly, I can almost live with that, okay? You're having very generous, the highest weekly benefits and the highest taxes. What I can't live with is you have that, but you also have the easiest to qualify system in the entire country. It's full of loopholes. 49 states require you to, a trigger in order for you to get unemployment insurance. There is a minimum earnings test, which we have. You have to earn a certain amount of money to qualify for unemployment insurance. But there's also in 49 other states, which we don't have, you have a minimum time work test. You've got to have a real attachment to the workforce. Usually it's 20 weeks, or it's 15 weeks. Everyone assumes in the legislature, the vast majority think that we have a 15-week requirement, that you have to work 15 weeks to qualify for unemployment insurance. It's not true. Absolutely untrue. It's an average. That's an average. You can qualify for unemployment insurance in a couple weeks if you earn enough money, and it happens all the time. And the system is gamed. You have employers and employees alike that just go on this pattern of, okay, we're going to pay you for the job. You're going to be on. You're going to earn just enough to go on UI, and you do your 30 weeks of UI, and then we'll bring you back. Happens all the time. Could we fill that loophole? No. And although there were messages a year ago from the Senate President that she wanted to really reform unemployment insurance, there was messages from the House Speaker that he wanted to reform unemployment insurance as well back in the wintertime. The governor in his State of the State, he called upon employers to come to the table to reach a compromise on unemployment insurance. And the very next breath he said, I call on organized labor to come to the table to reach a compromise on unemployment insurance in exchange for a minimum wage increase. Well, we got the minimum wage increase, but we didn't get a real unemployment insurance reform. So where are we now? The legislature has 2.5 months before they go out. This whole package, unemployment insurance, and more importantly, minimum wage. It sits today in a conference committee. The bottom line is the legislature may or may not work out a compromise. The date that they really have to come out with a compromise and then go to the floor and pass something and then send it to the governor. The deadline in order to really stop this ballot initiative would be the first Wednesday of July. So we'll see what happens, particularly in June, if something comes out. There's some of us that are pretty skeptical, see whether, even if the legislature passes a minimum wage, whether that really stops the organized labor folks from putting on the ballot, because there's some that believe they want to put it on there because it's going to help out their mandatory paid sick leave law, which is a whole nother issue that's going to hurt particularly those businesses that are in the consumer area. In my office, hey, if I call in sick, I have voicemail, I have email, I have others, that can pick up the phone and replace me for a day. And so I'm still paid, but I don't have to call in a temp or call in someone else. I don't have to pay 2 people for 1 shift. That doesn't happen in a restaurant, for instance. I have a member called me the other day down on the Cape, a restaurant, and she said, I hire a bunch of 20-something college girls, and if it's sunny, and their friends all want to go to the beach, they don't come in. They call in sick. And that's when they're not being paid. Can you imagine if the law requires them to be paid? So that restaurateur, she's going to have to pay 2 people for 1 shift. And that, a lot of people don't, you speak about this in the legislature, and, from their own perspectives, their own offices, that's not how it works. If someone calls in sick, it doesn't cost them anymore. In my own office, it doesn't cost me anymore. In a lot of workplaces, it doesn't. But if you're in this consumer business, if you want to keep your consumer service level at the same level, if someone's calling in sick, you've got to replace that person. So you're paying 2 people for the same shift. So the SEIU is pushing this. The feeling is, the polling shows that, that's the public is pretty split on that. So they may be willing to vote it down, and this would be the first ballot initiative in the country on this issue. So, they feel like it's pretty important to pass it. The employers, on the other hand, think it's pretty important to defeat it, to prevent it from going into other states. But the feeling is they may want to put the minimum wage on the ballot to help support their effort on the paid sick, because, frankly, there's never been a state that didn't put a minimum wage proposal on the ballot, and the public didn't pass it. So I've gone on way too long. That's where we are. It really is a very disappointing year. We're not giving up. This bill is still in conference committee. There is, Speaker DeLeo is to his credit, he's pushing a jobs and economic development bill this spring. And you know what? That is designed, the intent is to help small businesses. We're going to take another crack in that bill as it moves forward. Let's talk about things like time and a half pay on Sunday. Let's talk about some other issues to mitigate the cost of employing people in small business settings in the Commonwealth. And let's go back at this thing again. And we need your help. You've got two great legislators here in Winthrop. I mean, two of the most respected, in the entire state. But you know what? I don't care what Chamber of Commerce you are, or what city and town it is, what rep it is, what senator. They're going to respond to their local chamber and their local employers far more than they're going to respond to people like me. And that's why I appreciate, Betsy, the invitation to come out today, and I hope you'll continue to work with us on these important issues. Thank you. I'd be happy to take a couple questions if you like. Yes.
Thank you, first of all, for coming. This is obviously a very complicated issue. If you're earning the $10 an hour and you're trying to support a family, that puts you in a difficult place. And then there's all these small businesses like us. It's going to be a challenge. So I have two questions. One is, if there's a federal law passed, does that take precedent over the state? And secondly, is there any sign of any incremental minimum wage for bigger companies that have bigger margins that might be able to absorb part of these costs?
Two great questions. First on the federal, it's what the law that takes precedent is the most generous. So, if the state passes a higher minimum wage than what the federal law is, that's what's going to take precedent, and vice versa. As far as employer size, that has not really gotten any traction in the past. In the future, it may. The interesting thing is it kind of gets into that whole teen wage, though, versus adults. Frankly, they're organized labor and supporters say, well, there's only one minimum wage, and that it should apply to everybody, and we don't want to create different standards and so forth. So I mean, if we can't even sell a little bit of a break in order to keep our teenagers employed and keep them off the street and try to lower give them that experience and lower the amount of their student loans, I'm not hopeful for looking at that for a next step. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point that becomes an issue that will be openly discussed. Yes.
But I don't understand this. How do the legislators justify the decrease in the kids being hired during the summertime? I mean, what do they say about that? It's a reality. They say, well, less kids are going to be hired than more kids. If you have a certain budget to work with, you can't go beyond the budget, so you hire less workers. What is your response to that?
That is a great question. And you know what? You sit down there, you sit with them, and you go through all the discussions, give them the real numbers. These aren't even my numbers. Commonwealth Corp is a state agency that oversees job training, and this is their study from a year ago April. A lot of them don't really understand. Frankly, the lack of awareness of some of these issues about the lack of teen jobs, the very existence of time and a half pay on Sunday. They either didn't know that existed or they thought it existed in all states and for all employers. Both totally wrong. The lack of understanding is very disappointing, number one, and number two, once they do understand it, they tend to agree with you, but when push comes to shove and it hits the floor and the votes come and the state house halls are filled with the organized labor lobbyists, and they're getting phone calls and emails and an election year, hey, I mean, look, 18 of the top 20 political action committees in Massachusetts are labor PACs. Everyone thinks that, it's big business and employers that fund elections. Not in Massachusetts. 18 of the top 20 political action committees are union PACs, primarily public union PACs. Money is important, and the biggest job, and unfortunately, I hate to sound like I'm getting, tainted in my growing years, but the biggest job that a lot of these folks think about, the elected officials, is getting reelected. And, it can get very, very disappointing, and that's why, it's very important, all of you as local employers and local chambers, you have to keep the pressure on them and let them know that you're watching them, because that's what the unions do. That's what the other folks do. We're watching you, and look, you may not be supporting them at the same level financially, but they want your support in the voting booth, and that's the most important thing to them.
John, I've spoken to our local elected politicians about this issue on a number of occasions, and I got to tell you, I'm really disappointed in them. I really am disappointed in them in this issue. Particularly the teenage wage thing. To me, that just shows a lack of caring and understanding, because if they actually stopped and were honest about it, there's nothing we could do to help kids more than to put them to work.
Right.
And nothing keeps them from working more than $11 an hour wage or a $16 an hour on Sunday.
Right.
I know there's other people in this room that hire more kids than I do, but I always try to have kids. I have lots of stories of great kids that started with me and went places, but you know what, there's going to be less and less. And it just really has gotten to me how they feel about this.
I totally agree, and look, it isn't just stores and restaurants that are, that hire the kids. You talk, and unfortunately they can't really lobby, they can't be vocal on this. The local YMCA's. You think about a lot of the other types of employers that kids go to today for jobs. I live up in Beverly. I was fortunate. My kids were fortunate enough that I served on the board of the Beverly Y, and they were on the swim team and everything. They each got swim lessons and lifeguarding jobs because of the connections. But for those three that got those jobs, there were hundreds that did not get those jobs, and that was 10 years ago. It's far worse today, and I don't see it turning around unless we get good public policy that incents employers to do the right thing to hire these teenagers. Anything else?
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank the Winthrop Sun Transcript and Mike Cabral, WCAT, for their coverage. Thank you again for the AMVETS for hosting, and Senna Cafe for the delicious breakfast. Thanks again to all of you for coming. Please mark your calendars for Tuesday, June 10th, when we have our final business breakfast for the summer. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you.